website. Today I want to talk about three things that are kind of related. First drafts, practicing your website, and then the big bugbear that I'm going to get some flack on, outlining. Let me start with outlining. I believe you should outline. Everything should be outlined at least a little bit. It doesn't have to be a rigorous outline. It could be 20 bullet points of just the key plot areas that you want to hit on your way in and your way out. I'm a sucker for structure in novels. I love reading about structure in novels and screenplays. So I do follow the hero's journey pattern or the Mythic Structure pattern, where you've got your inciting event and then your decision point, which brings you into your second act, and then your midpoint of your novel, which is sort of a pseudo-climax. I'm just rushing over this because it's not part of this lecture. It will be part of a lecture far on in the future. If you look at the 7-point plot outline for short stories that I talked about in the first video, it's similar to that, but there's more fence posts, basically. And I do try to adhere to that for my outline. And I basically hit the main points. I don't hit every little detailed chapter or anything like that. And I don't stick to my outline. I can veer off of it, but it's there if I get in trouble. And the reason I'm so adamant about having at least some sort of outline is because I got bit by it once. I got contracted to write 2 novels without even showing proposals. So when I went into the first one, I said, well, I don't need an outline. I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this for a while now. And I wound up finishing the book, 400 pages, reading it, and it made no sense. And so I trashed the book. This is 8 months into my 10 and a half that I was allocated to do it, and I had to rewrite the entire book in 2.5 months. I outlined first for the second one, and I made it. But it was the kind of experience nobody needs to go through. So when you outline, you don't have to outline everything. You don't have to stick to your outline, but it gives you a safety net in case you do wander too far off the track. You have a way to come back. And if you happen to go off the track and it works, fine. But at least you had a map at the beginning. You wouldn't drive from here to New York without some sort of map. You might not stick to it, you might go sightseeing, you might take an alternate route, but at least if you need to, you can get back on track with your map. So my outlines are very organic, very flexible. I don't outline, except sometimes everything comes to me at once, and my outline almost looks like a finished book. Those are good times. The outline becomes a creative process. But if the outline is not the creative process, then there's no point in outlining ever too much stuff, because you want the stuff to come out of your right brain. Writing is a very right brain activity. You don't want the left brain to step in during first drafts and tell you how crappy your writing is and making you stop writing. You want to keep your internal editor at bay until you do your second draft. Second drafts are all about going through the first draft, making notes, writing a document about what to look for, and then going through and carefully editing it. I usually do 3 drafts before I send anything into my publisher. And since we're on the topic of first drafts now, I want to use a term that I use all the time that I got from an Anne Lamott book called Bird by Bird, which is a great writing book. And the term is shitty first drafts. I use it so much my agent now refers to SFDs, shitty first drafts. So I'm trying to bring it into the modern vocabulary. You should get into the mindset that your first draft is a shitty first draft. Don't worry about the words you're throwing on the paper. Follow your outline very vaguely if you need to. It's nice. It's good for keeping you sane. But like I said, don't be afraid to veer off it. It is a first draft, and it's going to be shitty. It's going to be a shitty first draft any way you slice it. Sometimes on your second read, after you put it away for 2 weeks to a month, bring it back out, read it, because you're too close to it otherwise. Hopefully you won't have the reaction I had and tank the whole 400 pages into the garbage. And you might be surprised at how good it actually is. Sometimes that happens. Actually happens a lot. But be prepared to write shitty first drafts. And then there's one other thing that really bothers me about writing, And that is if Michael Jordan, say, went for a practice session at the gym and shot 100 hoops and only 40 actually went in, he's not going to go home at night and cry about how bad of a basketball player he is and hit the big bottle of Jim Beam. It's just not going to happen because he knows he's practicing. Writers, for some reason, are the only ones that I can think of who don't practice. We just assume every day is going to be a Hemingway day, and if it's not, we go home and bitch about it to our spouses and hit the bottle of Jack. It's crazy. You can't expect to get better at a craft, and writing is a craft unless you practice it. So I'm all about practicing. Write a lot of words. Throw a lot of words away. It's never wasted. No words are ever wasted. For 2 years running, I wrote over 1 million words. That's 2 million words in 2 years. These days, I'm nowhere near that. I write about 3 novels a year. There was a time when I was writing upwards of, well, with rewrites, probably 6, 7 novels a year. Granted, most of them have not been published. Not that they aren't that good. Some of them are very strange. I've got one called the Jesus Book Tour that my agent calls a career killer. So she's not going anywhere with that anytime soon. It might be on the option block to self-publish that one. I don't know. I really like it. Jesus basically comes back to earth and is told to renew mankind's faith in God. And he signs a 2-book deal. So he has the new Jesus-approved Bible, and he also has this paranormal romance he's been working on. And when God finds out, he starts stripping Jesus of his power. So I've sort of turned the hero's journey on its head. Instead of having a man with a problem slowly go through the transformation process and try to become godlike, I've got the opposite happening. I've got a godlike character who slowly has his power stripped away, and through all the crises and ordeals and everything else, comes closer to becoming just a man. And then at the end, I'm not going to ruin the book because one day it may come out, but my agent calls it a career killer. So that was really all I wanted to talk about today. Practice, write a lot of words. Don't be afraid to write shitty first drafts. No one has to see it except you, but you will end up showing it to people. It'll be better than you think it is. Give it a 2-week to a month gestation period after you write it before you look at it. And if it is crappy, it doesn't matter. You've got your first draft down. Your second draft will be a lot cleaner because you're going to go at it with your left brain. But when you're learning all this new stuff, when you're reading these books, when you're watching these webinars, when you're doing anything, this stuff's getting digested into your subconscious, into your memory. And even if you're just writing out of your right brain, which, by the way, I have a really good trick for. My trick to get rid of my left brain internal editor is to write at night when I'm tired. I find my left brain shuts down a lot quicker than my right brain, which makes sense because when you're sleeping, your right brain's still active, and that's why you dream and everything else. It's all coming out of the right brain. That's why we all dream in archetypes and everything else, because we all have a similar right brain. If you believe in Carl Jung's collective unconscious, we all have the same set of images embedded in our brain. And these all come out when you write. If the first draft, if you write them out of your right brain, and that's what you want to do. You want to write primal stories the way that our psyche is set up to accept a story. And we have certain things in our minds that trigger us to, yes, that's a good story. Certain events in the story that we expect to happen at a certain time. I'm not saying make your stories cookie cutter by any means. And I'm not saying that they should be stayed or that they should be predictable. They shouldn't. But you can, within this framework, you are welcome to do whatever you want. But get the framework down. Learn the structure. Learn everything you can about writing before you start breaking any rules. Don't just jump in and think, well, I don't need to listen to all this stuff. I can write stuff that's brilliant that doesn't follow any of the orthodox rules, because you will fail. Your writing will fail. Get the confidence from writing good, solid stories that follow the structure that people expect it to follow. You will sell stories if you do that. You will sell novels if you do that. And then, once you've done this and have your confidence, feel free to go change things. But change them knowing what you're changing and why you're changing them. Don't just haphazardly write your second drafts. Your first drafts are shitty first drafts. Follow an outline a little bit. Don't outline to the teeth. Outline flexible, single bullet points if you want. At just certain points in your story, you want to be here, 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 and here. And if I do that, I know at least I will have a proper story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And they don't have to come in that order. Pulp Fiction, which basically just messes up all the time in the entire timeline of a story, still follows Mythic Structure to a T. It's all he's done is shuffled, all Quentin Tarantino's done is shuffled all the different milestones for the story and presented them in a different order. But they're all still there. That's why we can watch the movie and not be completely lost. Because somewhere in our psyche it anchors all the points and they end up feeling satisfactory by the end of the movie because they've all been taken care of. He's brilliant with structure. Watch, what was the one, the two-part one with Uma Thurman? I can't remember now. Watch the second one. The second one is brilliant mythic structure. All the movies that have messed up timelines, like Run Lola Run, again follows mythic structure perfectly. I'm not going to talk about mythic structure. It will be in a more advanced video later on. Hero's Journey, mythic structure, 3-act structure, 4-act structure are all names for the same thing. In fact, a 4-act structure, that of all the ones I've seen, are basically a 3-act structure that splits it in the middle of the second act. So you have your first act, your second and third, which is actually a 4th act separated by a midpoint climax, and then a 4th act. This is the way, at least in Western society, we want our stories to be told. Learn how to tell stories properly, and then write them any way you want to once you've learned. But go in knowing what you're doing differently and know why you're doing it. I really can't think of a good reason why you'd ever want to, unless you're writing an art film or something like that, or just trying something out and practicing. Don't be afraid to practice. Not every day will be a Hemingway day. And that's all I have to say. So write lots. Writers write. We don't talk about writing, we write. A friend of mine has STFU and write on top of his, above his desk. STFU, shut the fuck up and write. Sorry, I didn't mean to use the F word. I drop F-bombs occasionally. I try to keep this site as PG-13 as possible. So just ignore that one, let it slip. But it just hammers home the point. Writers, STFU, and write. That's it. Thanks for visiting my webpage today. Michael out.